Why don't we conclude this round with Roselyn? I understand that last year in New York you raised the possibility, or actually discussed the need for African pension funds to market the continent in a very professional way in the United States to provide potential investors, potential partners, opportunity to understand better some of the lucrative opportunities that are here on the continent. And I wonder if you might expand on that a little bit and tell us what you had in mind.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm from the city of Baltimore, and we have in assets under management $2.5 billion. But those $2.5 billion extend far beyond our reach, and it generates more importance than some of my bigger counterpart funds in the U.S. And I say that because 20% of our investments, of our assets, go to minority businesses, MBEs and WBEs, 20%. For a small fund, that is a very large percentage. But today we're talking about marketing African funds to U.S. pension funds, and how and what is the best way to go about it. So there's no question that Africa is lucrative for investments. The only question is, how do we get that message across consistently to all of the pension funds in the U.S. and more? A few things that I need to put in perspective. Where are we today? We are in a low investment return environment. If you look at the investment returns for most public pension funds, most of us did not make our assumed rate of return, which for the most part was between 7.5% to 8.5% last year. Some of us have since reduced that assumed rate of return, and this is the actuarial rate of return. We have reduced those rates of return, but yet it will be very difficult to achieve the 7 and 7.5% that we are held to. Which is another reason why we need to look beyond our borders, beyond the U.S. borders. Although most people I talk to say it's the best place for investments today, we still have to look beyond our borders. And looking towards Asia is not the only alternative. We need to look towards Africa. Something else you should know, public pension funds in the U.S. are under a lot of scrutiny. And the reason for that, partially, if you take politics away, is we're not all fully funded, which means if we had to liquidate our funds today, we would be unable to pay every pensioner or every member who's entitled to a benefit one for one. So for that reason, it is important that we make good investment decisions and try to close the gap between our funded ratios and getting back to fully funded status. So, who do you need to market to? If you have a good product, you want to be marketing to CIOs, executive directors, pension fund trustees, investment officers, and there are a lot of us in this room today. And the reason we're here is really to drill home the importance of this market to the U.S. So what's standing in our way from being two ships passing at night? You have a product, we have the funding, we need to understand each other. What do you need to sell that product to us? And what's our mandate? What's our guidelines? What's our objective to buying your product? Now, do we buy every product every day? No. So you may be selling me a product that I don't need today, but I might need later on. Sell it anyways. Sell your product, sell your country, sell the continent. That's what they do in Asia. We can replicate that in Africa. One good way to sell and I think you heard it from my panel, is partnership. Sometimes we need partnerships. Public pension funds have a herd mentality. We do not like to operate in a vacuum. We are not going to be the Rambo of the room. So if the state of New York is investing in Africa funds or investing in infrastructure in Africa, that's an opportunity to sell, for me to sell that to my board of trustees, that it may be a good investment, something to look into. And I think some of my other public pension funds will agree that if there's an opportunity and is past perhaps the first fund going on to the second fund, it opens the door and allow us to explore more investments in Africa. So partnerships is very important. Now, there are different ways of partnerships. You can partnership through governments. You can partnerships through organizations like NASP and MIDA, I hope I'm saying it right. You can partnership through other public pension funds employees or directors that you know to make introductions on your behalf. You may call me, I don't know who you are, but if Orem Graves called me and said, hey, Roz, can you meet with this organization coming from South Africa? I'll be more inclined to say, sure, Orem, let me check my calendar. So develop relationships, leverage those relationships, go through those relationships to make contacts on your behalf. It doesn't cost you anything to do that. It's absolutely free. The other thing is, in terms of your marketing, there are different ways that different funds make decisions. So corporations make faster decisions. Usually it's the CIO or the heads of investments. They can make quick decisions and direct monies to your funds. Public funds have a long process to go through. So don't wait until you're about to raise your funds to say, oh, now we're raising our fund. That's not going to happen. It takes us a long time, years, to get to know you, to get to know your fund, to get to know your organization, and to know that 3 years later, the same people are still there, and now you've made some progress. That's what we're looking to see. Consistency, a good product, returns, or promise of good returns. So I think I covered most of it. I'll stop here for now and take questions.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much, Roz, for that very helpful set of comments.
Doing business in Africa. You can't afford to be without Africa Investor.